Get your comments over here. Right. Right. This is the great Johannes speaking. This is my live stream. This is the first time I'm doing a live since the Americans got banned off of TikTok. That's how I frame it. I don't think the US banned TikTok. I think TikTok banned US citizens. And that has some implications. So before I introduce the main topic is going to be about the global economy in this episode. But before I introduce the main topic, I just want to note that I see a development here in the value or the weight of U.S. media influence. Namely, it started with Americans having a ton of influence through their TV, their radio, right? Especially since the 1950s onward, after they won the war. They did win it culturally speaking, although the Russians defeated the Germans at Berlin, of course, and in the East. But Americans then had their own social media platforms. Were very American people are extremely creative, clearly. And so they output a lot of content. The world consumes it. So they influence the world. And then they keep doing that even on TikTok. When TikTok became the most popular platform or the most popular social media in the past few years, Americans are still very dominant on that platform, even though there's just 170 million of them compared to, I don't know, a billion around the world. But here comes the thing. Now that Americans are off of TikTok, they're losing. It's the first time in American history that they are losing influence. Right now, Americans are not influencing us on TikTok, but most of us are still here. So Americans want to go to Rednote, a Chinese app now. I had a look at Rednote, created an account there. Nah, it's not it. It's just not what we want. It's totally different culture there. It's China. I looked at Instagram. I'm sorry, I can't bear to use the Instagram app. It's such an awful design. I get a headache. I get very confused. Maybe I'm old, but I get very confused by looking at the Instagram app on my phone. It doesn't make me want to use it. It's so confusing, especially when you come from TikTok, where everything is so streamlined, so well thought through, right? And then you have basically sort of backwater third world app called Facebook, Meta, and Instagram. No, thank you. Yeah, Rednote is absolutely different. I see some guests coming in already. All right, I was just about to introduce now the main topic of tonight's show, the global economy. I'm going to be very interactive with the audience as well. If I see any comments coming in that I can reply to, I will reply to you, and I might play some background music this time. Wagner without words, the ring of the Nibelungs without words, so you can hear some classical music softly in the background. It's going to get started in a bit. Before I do anything at all, I wanted to show you this. I'm looking at my TikTok live studio over here. Open up this image. I hope you can see it on screen. This image, I'll just show it briefly, but I'll refer to it repeatedly throughout the show. This is a graph of the number of days worked by effectively Europeans or Western people throughout the past few centuries, since around, say, 1300s or so. And notice that from the 1400s or so, Europeans were working just 125 days out of the year. And steadily, this has been climbing up to 350 almost. Nowadays, people... Oh, that was even in the 1850s, by the way. But nowadays, yeah, people work around 300 to 350 days a year. Some people work every day of the year, right? We get our weekends off. We get our holidays and so on. But Americans especially, their holidays are so short, so brief. They work more than 300 days a year. So that's more than doubling them compared to the Middle Ages. And this has so many implications. So I'll remove the image for a moment. The implications of this. The fact that we are working close to 300, 350, 365 days a year. The problem is no one can work more than 365 days a year. There is a natural limit then, a time limit to how much work we can do. 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year. More than that isn't possible. The only way to increase your productivity beyond working more hours is to increase to increase your productivity, meaning how clever you work, But this requires training, education, and requires a people who is motivated to use their mind, to push their mind to their own personal boundaries. That requires them to have high intelligence, high IQ, right? You want to have a high IQ population. And I notice now immediately that the United States is trying to solve this problem, that they can't push people to work more than 24 hours a day or like 18 hours a day or so. You can't do more. Is they bring in the immigrants. Okay. Lower class immigrants from Mexico, for example, they can do a lot of, gardening, or they can do construction, right? Now they're bringing in the middle class Indians, the Indians with a degree. And let's assume they didn't scam their degree from the Bitcoin University, but they got a real one and they're actually competent. They're going to replace American workers because they're cheaper, right? So you lower your cost. And so the United States has for a long time always tried to get the best people from all over the world and put them in the US so that the US can be this excellent nation, the nation with all the skills and all the talents and all the money. And then what? And then what? I don't see it happening. Elon Musk would like us to move to Mars, but I don't even believe we've been to the moon. So for me, that's hard to believe that we're going to do that anytime soon. I get the impression that we are nearing the end of the whole global economic system. And I would advocate that we should go back. Let me show the graph one more time, the thing I'm talking about. This graph over here, showing you the number of days worked throughout the past few centuries. It tells me that when we were working less, we were more religious. We had more time to explore our personalities, more time to explore our talents and things that drive ourselves as a person. Whereas when we start working more hours, it means we're working more hours for someone else. In the Middle Ages or so, during the Middle Ages, we used to be peasants owning our own little plot. We could do whatever we wanted on it, right? We were taxed, right? But apparently not that much because we didn't need to work 300 days a year, just 125. I'll remove the image for now again. And, all right. I'm playing the classical music now. I can hear it now. So, as we start working more days, we're no longer working for ourselves. We're not working for our plot, our farm anymore. We end up working for corporations that centralize our labor into the hands of even fewer people, right? It's effectively a feudal system, always has been. I don't know why we ended up calling this democracy and freedom when it's just a feudal system by a different name, right? We're still wage slaves working for corporations, but when actually during the Middle Ages we were freer than we are now. We had more free time to ponder and wonder, to go hiking and fishing, so to speak, right? But especially to feel that bond with God. And so that's the realization here that the Bible says so, right? You either work for God or for Mammon. Mammon is the money god. And we live in the money culture. We live in a financial culture that does not cannot quantify economically the value of a spiritual life. It is simply discounted as having €0 or $0 value, right? If you ask an economist what's the value of a visit to the church, they'll say it's like negative $200 because you could have worked 2 hours and make $100 an hour instead of going to church for 2 hours. So from the economist's perspective, going to church has no value. Spending 8 hours of your day by yourself, say, wandering nature, looking at the birds and the bees and reflecting and so on, and allowing to really take in the reality and the nature, and to take in any sensations that you may perceive through your senses, your sensory organs, right? And to spend so much time digging and diving into yourself to truly bring your personality to fruition. I am convinced that if we were able to talk to these peasants from the 15th century, it would strike us that they would have extremely well-crafted personalities, that they would be very confident in who they were. Not at all the way modern leftists represent the past as being worse, but that the people physically and mentally were better off. They didn't have LGBT problems, not on the scale we have them today, right? They didn't have mass pandemics. Farmers don't have these kinds of problems because they don't live in big cities, so they don't really have that pollution that we have since the industrial age, right? And I see lots of comments coming in, so I'm going to be more interactive as well during this episode. But I just wanted to paint this picture first, that for the past 600 or 700 years, we've been working more and more and more hours, but it's been bringing us less and less and less. It's cost us our spiritual connection. It's cost us the development of our personalities, and it has given us lots of mental disability, to the point where we are giving mute girls in a wheelchair mastectomies who couldn't even say that they wanted to. Their parents and the doctor simply went ahead with that. I saw this video on TikTok, and it was just extremely disturbing. And I wonder also if that disturbing nature of the crimes committed against children, when they show it to you in the news up front, like they show you that girl without her bosom, right, stitched up, they show it to you, it's meant to shock you into submission. It's a shock and awe tactic, right? It's meant to shock you into submission, right? So Robert asks if I'm optimistic or pessimistic for the future of the European race. I'm optimistic because every dwindling end has a vigorous new beginning. We're just going to start over. That's it, really. We're just going to start over. You feel like they've weakened the Western men and made us obsolete? No. They haven't weakened us at all. The way I see it is, there are as many strong people today as there were 500 years ago. There's just a lot more weak people added to it. And those aren't going to make it. But the strong core needs to start something. They get to start over. They get to start over. We start that vigorous new beginning. And there are many pathways for us to do so. One is to help precipitate the collapse of the global economy. Right, that poor girl, yeah. What the doctors did, they should be jailed. I looked into who are the people who do these surgeries, and there's a lot of women doing those surgeries. They like to cut off your genitals for some reason. These women are mentally ill and they need to be jailed. Yeah, all these doctors, the surgeons, the consultants and so on, and the psychologists who refer them, the kids, they all need to be in jail. Parents probably too. I think the parents should, for allowing it, should also be in jail. And the kids, man, they've been maimed for life. Their gender was not changed. Why she got a mastectomy? Well, she was in a wheelchair and disabled. She couldn't even talk. They just gave her one because the parents decided she wanted to be a boy. That happened in the USA. That's Mengelean. You know, Dr. Joseph Mengele was accused of heinous, torturous experiments on his prisoners, and we're doing that today in our world, just like that, as though now. But now we call it good, right? It's completely insane. Baron asks or notes, you don't see how people will voluntarily give up materialism and consumerism. Well, in the end, they won't have to. They'll just starve. I think I myself, I'm totally tired of the work life. And I think most people are tired of work life. If they were offered an alternative, if they could settle in some land where they didn't have to work so hard, like say half the hours, they wouldn't make much money, but they would have more freedom. Like you'd have more time to do things for yourself, explore your talents and your abilities, right? And that should be the point, right? Really? Oh, you have a grandson who's now called Hazel, yeah. You know, what went wrong? Something deeply went wrong here, and the people doing this need to be in jail. You know, I get the impression that the American culture, that is very creative, admittedly, is also the same one pushing for a lot of these disorders in the world. Americans are spearheading the LGBT movement everywhere. You may not know this, but when the USA tries to forge alliances with, say, countries in Africa, say with Kenya, they make Kenyan government officials required to participate in LGBT programs in Kenya. So in exchange for US funding, they have to do the LGBT. There are very few countries, even in Europe, who would go against this. I think only Hungary at the moment, out of all the EU nations, only Hungary is going against this LGBT stuff. Refuses to implement it in the schools. Poland used to be the other one, but Poland last year was captured by the USA, right? And so the Polish government was overthrown. And now Poland is embracing the LGBT too. Why on earth are they doing this? It's a deliberate destruction of people, especially when it's targeted against white people, right? So I see a bunch of people joining the live stream. So we're talking about basically the nearing end of the global economy. I'll show the graph one more time. If you can see it on screen, the graph represents the number of days worked since the 1300s, say 700 years ago to today or so. And we used to work only 125 days a year, and now over 300, 350. And the reason is the globalist overlords are just so greedy. They've become so good at exploiting the people. They get us to work harder in exchange for tinker toys, blinking, shining new things, cars, houses, and so on. I saw somewhere that during the Great Depression in the USA, your annual income was 22% of a new home, and today it's 10%. Your annual income in the USA is 10% of a new home. So basically, during the Great Depression, people had it better than people do today in the USA, right? Are there still people from the USA here? Because they've been logged off of TikTok. They can't use it anymore, right? So I don't think there's any US people anymore. But I'm not really noticing it in the live stream numbers. I usually get around 50 or so, 50 to 100. So I don't think the Americans are they going to be missed on TikTok? Well, I wonder. Someone asks, Johannes, do you think this year will be the end of the debt-based money system? Maybe not this year, but it has to come to an end. But then, before it comes to an end, they will turn you into a slave. They will turn consumers and employers into slaves, right? Where do you think the pro-European revolutionary violence will start? Is there hope for England? Yeah. Judging by the way that the media and the political people in the UK treat Rotherham and Southport and the grooming scandal, they do believe that white people could revolt in anger against the crimes being committed against them. So I think it could even happen in Germany. There is a tipping point anywhere when the people's survival instincts kick in and they start pushing back. And it can be very abrupt and very emotional, irrational, right? And so the powers that be, these intellectual technocrats, they try to do whatever they can to prevent that from happening. But will they forever be able to prevent it? Absolutely not. We are going to witness this in the next 5 years. Nations in Europe will begin to fall. Maybe it will be Italy. Maybe it will be some country like, I don't know, Albania or Greece or something. But it will happen, and eventually it will reach us in the Netherlands, Belgium, England, USA, Canada, Australia, right? And once one country shows the example, when if the people would rise up in a revolt against their government and they win a success, if one people succeeds, all the others in the West will follow. We will all share through social media. Hey, they can't shut down email, and so eventually the word's going to come out, right? And people are going to find out that it is possible to resist these exploitative, billionaire technocrat governments that push us to work more and more hours for no real purpose. They've robbed us. They've robbed us of our human life. It turns out you don't need to work 350 days a year just to eat and live somewhere and clothe yourself and travel a little bit. You could do all that with 125 days a year. What are the other 225 days for? Well, they're for the squander of the rich. They get all the big yachts and so on, but we work for those things, right? It's just madness. You think Germany is the one? Yeah, some people also suggest that Germany might be that first country where, because they have been so suppressed culturally, psychologically, they may be the ticking time bomb that no one expects, but it might be them. But I also think that the people living in northern England are the sort of types who might blast off and start fighting in the streets because they're just tired of all the repression from their government, right? Their kids being murdered and raped on a scale that causes a genocidal trauma. I think the music was a bit too aggressive or too loud. I'm going to shut down the music because it's just distracting to me a bit. Yeah. You know, in the Netherlands recently, a 16-year-old girl was hit by a car driven by a brown guy. He had not been paying attention to the road. He got 4 months in prison. But if you would shout "White Lives Matter" in a public street, you could go to jail for 6 months. See, so don't these stupid governments in the UK or in the Netherlands and Germany, don't they understand if you repress your people so much, punishing your own people in such a way where saying the wrong words gets you more time in jail than raping and killing girls, underage girls, then what the hell is going on here? You are not going to last very long. That level of oppression is not going to last very long. You know, I notice I use the words repression, oppression, and suppression a bit, but because I'm a Dutch speaker, I don't always know the exact difference. But the government is pushing down on white people. The governments of the West are cracking down on white people so much, it's making life unlivable, unbearable. We deserve a lot better than this, and we need to start talking about what we are going to do to break out of this madness, right? And demand better treatment, or simply do away with those who don't treat us well and start treating ourselves well. We don't need to ask for permission in the end. In the end, we could just do whatever we want. We only live once. We weren't put here on this earth just to be obedient all the time. We were put here to figure out how to live and unfold ourselves, our personalities, in the best way possible, and perhaps overcome the obstacles in our way. And today, these obstacles are the billionaire technocrats and the government serving them, right? Robert says he lives in Scandinavia and he's worried that we are too agreeable to start fighting. But yeah, you are too agreeable. All common people are agreeable to a large degree. But it only takes a handful or maybe even one extremely disagreeable leader to stand up and lead these people, since those people will follow anyway, right? It's not impossible that something unconscious is brewing already, causing these people later to become very aggressive and wild, right? They achieve a state of frenzy where all of a sudden everybody collectively feels that this world is going nowhere and we're going to have to fight for a new one. And in that state of frenzy, the people, you know, if they would be in a state of frenzy for an hour, they could overthrow the government. If they were in a state of frenzy for 7 days, they would overthrow the whole world, right? All right. My sound is here, right? All right. I got a message that my sound was off, but no, it's right here. So, you know, somebody told me I should stop talking about minorities and crimes. No, I'm going to keep talking about minorities and crimes. You know, people come to live with us. They should treat us as their hosts, and we treat them as our guests. But you come here to rape and kill, that relationship, that deal is off the table, clearly. We need more division because it's stupid to remain so agreeable that we allow people to trample us, to walk all over us, and nobody does a damn thing to do what's right anymore. We aren't even allowed to talk about it because everybody fears. You know why there is such an extreme crackdown on free speech? It's precisely this. Because if we would start speaking the true words, and if those words would be heard and felt, the people would revolt. They would go out, right? They would go out and demand justice. You can't allow, as in the UK, 250,000 girls being gang raped, underage girls groomed by mostly Pakistani Muslim men, and then pretend as though we need to forget about this and let's be distracted by aliens and UFOs and Chinese weather balloons. Oh, look over there, right? No, we're going to talk about this topic now until it is resolved, until retribution has been paid. Right. The system is corrupt. Right. And the solution is, well, it starts maybe with kicking out the bad immigrants, but it definitely leads toward us paving new ways. We're going different ways from now on. We're not going to follow these corrupt governments anymore that don't support us in any way. You see a lot of dumb people commenting, yeah. Uh, what do you think about East Asians in Europe? Why? What do you think about white people in Asia? You know, what if we sent 8 million white people to Beijing and they started causing trash and crime and so on? What would you say? It's the same. You would say the same things, and so you know the answer to the questions, right? Right. There's millions of girls. Yeah. The thing is, the masses will never obey logic, right? Yeah, that's true. People are led by emotion. When they start getting scared that maybe this world is not good for them, maybe the government is the enemy, when it gets through to them, right, they will respond differently. What's the real idea why we are accepting all this immigrants? That's an old story. The globalist elite, they need cheaper labor and more consumers and more obedient people that they think they can program more, younger people to replace older people, right? So it's not even an interesting story anymore. Yeah, they're doing the Kalergi plan. Our question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? We need to start rebuilding that more spiritually connected society that we used to have in the past, a patriarchal, authoritarian, theocratic, right? And you think that sounds bad because they made it sound bad. But actually, these things, like God, country, and people, right? These things allow you to live the freest life possible with the least mental health problems, right? We used to have it right, and it simply deteriorated into this situation that we have now, right? Where the people in politics are freaks. They're abnormal creatures. They're not normal people anymore, right? But they get to rule over you, right? They're deliberately destroying all that is good, healthy, and beautiful to squeeze out more economic profit, right? But we, the people, are only suffering. They're turning employees into slaves, right? They're turning entrepreneurs who used to have a sense of freedom, they're turning them into franchise employees, right? There's just no way to succeed in this world anymore, and I think a lot of people are onto it. They figured it out. I think you'd be surprised how much normie people really know if you talk to them privately and quietly, right? They know. Lots of normies feel this world isn't going anywhere, but they just keep following the mob. They keep following the herd. They keep going along with what other people are doing as long as things are still running. I guess that's what we'll still have to do. But privately, they do complain. So don't underestimate the normie, and don't underestimate the normie's capacity for violence, for a violent blow off, where they blow off steam, right? Cora Adventures agrees you did figure it out. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they cause a housing problem and then they take in immigrants. But I think that's part of the deliberateness of it all. They simply decided they can't profit off of the native European people as much as they'd like to. Oh, they'll just bring in other people who need a ton of services, at least. The immigrants coming in, they need language lessons, they need financial support. That's big business if you can tax the other people. If you can tax the white middle class to pay for what the immigrants need, you got a real great business going on, right? For as long as it lasts, of course, eventually you're going to run out of money. And that's maybe when people will finally begin to revolt. When we have no more money left, no more food to eat, we have no choice. We've got our backs against the wall and they're shooting at us. What are you going to do? All right? You're gonna run right at the people shooting you, because that's your only way out. That's what you're gonna do. And if you succeed, if you get there without getting shot and you survive the bullets, right, you will be so full of adrenaline, so full of testosterone in that moment, right? You are going to survive. You will have your victory. And that's us. That's the whole program for us. That's what we're going to have to do. Face that hail of bullets and run straight through it, because there's nowhere else to go for us, and then take over, take charge. We need reform indeed, yeah. No, that's not true. That's not true, Fly Bunny. Europeans civilized Africa. We built your infrastructure, and this is how you repay us. I mean, you ask us for the gold, but the gold was buried in your soil. You didn't even go looking for it. And when we found it, and now you want it back. No, you're not getting nothing back. It's really weird. Have you noticed that the Africans who comment, they all say the exact same thing over and over and over and over again? It's like they're one giant robot that keeps saying the same thing. They never have a new idea. Well, refugees, what do you mean? They're not even refugees. They're enemy combatants housed in your barracks, right? Literally, there's an asylum center near where I live, and it used to be an old defense barracks. So they're housing single fighting age males, because there's no women and children. They're housing them in our old military compounds. Like, gee, what does that symbolize? It symbolizes they're preparing a takeover using migrants or something, right? I'm not misleading my viewers at all. We're all surrounded, right? Could I make a realistic time estimations for a possible revolt in Europe? By what time do you think it must happen? There's no must, but it will happen. You know, during my lifetime, we will see the Europeans, part of them, the stronger part, sorry, is going to break free, find new land they can defend, and just start over. This isn't so much a matter of fighting the government. This is more about resistance by refusal, resistance by walking out, resistance by no longer taking part in the machinations that have been set up for us, and simply like a denialist movement. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not taking this shit no longer. That's what it's going to look like. And I think this can be achieved if there were some kind of spiritual revival among our people. That we feel that there is a God who can guide us out of this mess, and people start following the leader representing this God. Right? Then we walk out. It doesn't make sense to attack Keir Starmer's house, for example. It makes a lot more sense for white people to move out of London and stop paying taxes. We always have to start over, because this society is not worth saving. It's like the Titanic. It's sinking and drowning. You don't want to be on that anymore. You want to get off and start over. You know, every dwindling end has a vigorous new beginning. And we, talking about this, are the new beginning. We're not admitting defeat. We're admitting that the people ruling over us are imbeciles who will no longer get to rule over us. End of story. Yeah, the non-Europeans think completely differently, like the way we Europeans do. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Okay, let's do a little brainstorm. Let's try to talk a little bit more about what we can do without getting into immediate trouble. Because nowadays You speak out in the streets or in the pub, you get arrested, right? For hate speech. And there's no way you can organize anything at all using WhatsApp or something or Telegram because everybody's reading those messages. This is more about spreading a new kind of gospel, the gospel of competence. Show people the following. Look, what would you do if you didn't have to work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week? Right? What if you could do all you needed to do in 2 days a week? What would you do with the other 3 days you got back? And then you start thinking about, well, I would be making, I don't know, birdhouses or something. Oh, so you're good at woodwork. Yeah, I'm good at woodwork. Right? And what else would you do? I could make furniture. Right? Oh, see, so you could be like a craftsman or some sort. Right? And the people start to realize that they possess within them all sorts of talents that their job doesn't need and that they could fall back on. And when we have that, we have a sort of a cushion of competence to fall back on. That way, people become slowly aware of this fact. Hey, if all the people in our community would combine these hidden talents that we no longer use but still might have, hey, then we could do without the government. We don't need the government to take care of us anymore. We could take care of ourselves. And I think that's how it starts. That's how the whole new movement has to start. When we realize we don't need the money that the companies pay us, we might actually be able to live without it. By growing our own food and someone else makes furniture, and we could have all these skills in-house. And then what about the resources? We got plenty of resources, man. We'll trade with the world, no problem. A competent people with skills can trade their skills with the world. But then again, that's assuming globalism will continue. The global trade will continue. No, it won't. The world is going to fall apart into several regions. The old regions of Asia, China, Europe, of course, right? You'll have North America, South America, and so on, India. These regions will fall apart, meaning the global system will break up into the regional systems again. And you may have something like the old Russian Empire, but you'll also have something like the old Holy Roman Empire in Europe, right? And it becomes more a matter of what we can do regionally. And Europe has plenty of resources. We got more trees than we did 200 years ago, right? We can build houses, right? We can build ships with trees. We can do whatever we want, basically. We've got fertile agricultural land. I'd say even in Northern Europe, we have the most fertile land in the world. Right? We can work with that, right? Germany still has 10% of the coal worldwide. We can fuel things. There's plenty of things to do as long as we start accepting that the future is going to be nationalistic, meaning a focus on the strengths born of ourselves. We're going to be looking at what skills can we develop, what intelligence can we develop, right? But we will do that not in 40 hours of school education, but it will be more like homeschooling. But of course, you're not going to lock your kids up in your home. They will have the other kids, the neighbors' kids will be there too. Then when everybody's homeschooling, the neighbors' kids will be there. And you will have a very different kind of community where people who live next to each other actually get to know each other and actually realize, hey, we've got skills to share that we can help each other out with. And I think that's how it's going to be in the future. You'll have your warrior class too. You'll have a priestly class, right? You'll have some nobility, but only an aristocracy that is willing and able to fight and win wars for their people. Otherwise, they should be deposed, right? And that's what I think the warrior, there should be like a warrior elite that safeguards this. Like if the aristocracy doesn't serve the people anymore, as they do with globalism, the aristocrats only serve each other, they should be taken care of. Take them out, right? Get rid of them. The laws we live by, they are supposed to support us. And if they no longer do, then they are not our laws, right? The government is supposed to support the people's talents and their growth and development toward a sort of desired vision of a future. If the government is not doing that, then they're not the government. Get it? So how many governments in the West do you know of that are still actually the government? None of them. They're not really the government anymore. They are corrupt, criminal oligarchies, kleptocrats. They're thieves, basically, robbing our labor, but primarily by stealing our time. They lock you up in your office for 40 hours. They lock kids up in schools for 40 hours a week. You're being locked up. You're being robbed of your free time so that you cannot develop yourself in a much more meaningful way, right? right? I'm getting carried away a bit by this topic because it's just so important that we people start speaking out. I try to find other people who speak about these things the way I do. Yeah. And sometimes you find people, and I try to connect with them. But we've got to get together, man. There's this window of opportunity now that we have functional social media like TikTok. Let's go find these people, but actually go and do something. Right? Spread the message. Is the UK trying to stop homeschooling? Right, right. Yeah, great. Listen, keep going, man. Yeah, thank you. I'm just giving you whatever's in my head, whatever thoughts I can come up with. We um we shouldn't be afraid of things like the police, the law, and the government. Those things are there just to restrict our development. They don't really support us. It's all very oppressive, right? Um, they're missing the mark. They're really not doing anything useful anymore. It's almost as if our governments in the West are like servants who serve billionaires abroad at the expense of their own people. They're bankrupting their own nation. Like we're a write off. Their own people are just a write off, and we'll just write them off, and we'll just get new people or something. That's not going to work. We're going to make these people in government regret what they've done. Right. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, boycott businesses. One thing we could do is to start all this is teach people to quit buying anything you don't need. Cancel your subscriptions that you don't need. No Hulu, no Netflix, maybe not even a newspaper anymore. Just the minimal things that you really need, and quit buying stuff you don't need. Don't buy expensive brands, buy the cheaper version, right? The reason is that when we start reducing our financial footprint, the big corporations are going to get in trouble. They're going to go bankrupt. And then the whole global need for global trade and globalism will also drop off. It will fail, right? Flounder, right? Someone says both Korea, Japan, and China are kind of xenophobic society towards focused OTS, a way of having work. Okay, I get your point. Yeah, they're the East Asian societies are actually way more racist than white societies. They keep their borders largely closed. They do have migration into China now, but it's migration from Thailand, migration from Korea, not necessarily from Europe or Africa. I don't think they want to have a lot of Africans there. Um, yeah, I'm not wrong. The UK needs what the UK needs is a revolution, right? The Amish, no, yeah, the Amish are an example. Imagine you could do something like that with a country the size of Germany, that all Germans just pack up and say, screw you, we're not working for the economy anymore. We're not doing your NATO shit no more. We're just gonna live as the Amish do. It's a non-violent revolt, and what would governments be able to do about it? They don't have enough soldiers. They don't have enough police officers to stop people from simply switching to the Amish lifestyle. There wouldn't be enough police officers to stop it. They couldn't do it. You're from Slovenia, yeah. Right. When Isay says when you say things like this, the things I'm saying, everybody looks at you as though you're crazy. Yeah, they're being confronted with the truth, and it's hard to accept that. They're going to need some time to get used to it, right? Yeah, don't change cars. Yeah, keep using cash. Yeah, revolt in non-violent manners by basically clocking out, like saying, making it very clear, like, hey, this is not serving me. It's not going anywhere I care about. So I'm gonna do other things with my spare time from now on, right? Most people are just consumers. Yeah, we consume too much, and the more we consume, the more we keep supporting a system that works against us. So there's a little opportunity there for us to minimize our consumption footprint, right? And just it would delegitimize modern government. I think. Yeah, I'm Dutch. Right. If the Amish keep having their children, yeah, they might have 30 million of them in 100 years time. Right. Right. True. So that just shows you can start you can replant your people. Right. You can have a small number of people starting over somewhere and have a very aggressive birth rate policy, and you could just take over. Right. Get three hens who lay eggs. Right. You can eat them and sell them. Yeah. You know what's so interesting? I saw a documentary about people living off the grid, right? And there's, by the way, there's a reason why the off the grid living is so popular on YouTube and so on. Um, if you have one cow giving you milk, it gives you buckets of milk a day, which you can turn into butter and yogurt, right? And they had that family was a man, woman, and two kids, and they had one cow that gave them more milk than they could possibly eat. Also, putting milk in pancakes, putting milk in your omelet, and so on. Right? They had more milk than they could process from one cow. So, and how much land would you really need to have one cow? It's not much, you know. It's a nice plot, but it's really not huge or anything. And from the grass that would grow there naturally, right? And so you fertilize it with the manure and with the chicken and so on. Um, it is perfectly possible to survive effectively without money, right? Human beings throughout history have usually always done everything themselves. They would knit their own clothes, spin their own wool from the sheep into thread, right? They would milk their own cows. They would hunt if they needed to. So we have always done everything ourselves. And when we give people back that kind of confidence, knowing if they would know that in a small community of 100 people, they would be fine. All they needed is land that they can defend. And that's why I would argue for a sort of warrior class that would defend our land, right? Yeah, people are being scared of being called racist and far right, but these words mean nothing anymore when your children are being raped. Why do we still care about these words? We should adopt the racist word as the R word, right? Only white people can say the R word, like only black people can say the N word, only we can say the R word. We just take the word back, make it our own, and become very aggressive toward people who call us that word, because you're not allowed to say that. Only white people can say the R word, right? That's how it should be. And goat's milk is good too, yeah. All right. I've been speaking to you for almost 50 minutes. I think it was a productive episode. And I'll usually fill it up to an hour, so I'll just hang out with you for a bit longer. The R word is racist. Only white people can say the R word. Right. We're sick of factory food. Yeah, the food is fake, man. The food contains fewer and fewer nutrients. Foods in the past used to be much more nutrient dense, so you could eat very little and be satisfied. Now you have to eat a ton of volume, like 2 plates of pasta, and I'm still hungry because it just doesn't contain any nutrients anymore. They're just flooding your body with food you don't need, right? And then they add too much sugar to make it all really addictive as well. Yeah, so learning to prepare your own food, natural foods, right? That's very important. Yeah. Right, of course, yeah. Make re-emigration easier for Afrikaners. Yeah, like I always say that eventually, like the hardier people from the colonies should just return to Europe. But I hope you understand, Europe is not a paradise, and you're going to have to figure everything out anew over here. But eventually, say if the European economies collapse, yeah, we should welcome back all the anybody who wants to return to rebuild Europe, to help rebuild Europe, should be just be welcome, right? And our own people get to come back, right? To make ourselves strong again, right? Sourdough bread. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to look into that. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Yeah. Uh, I also found a lot of appreciation from people on TikTok, right? And maybe you know my story. Like 3 years ago, sorry, I started on TikTok talking, and at first I didn't know if people cared about anything I had to say, and then I found out there's a ton of people who care about what I have to say, and that makes me feel good because I have a lot to say about this, and I get I I get a lot of negativity as well, and I've learned to deal with that. At first, it was very hard. I thought it was very hard to deal with all the insults. People try to really crawl into your head and really destroy you from the inside out, right? I learned to deal with that, got over that. And now I'm more like, okay, I'm not worried about the people who dislike me. I'm thinking about the people I can mm, move into the future with. Like, what can we do together? What are the opportunities? What's the possibilities, right? So I'm starting to think more along those lines about what can we do for our people. Um, but we don't necessarily need to rely on billionaires. That would be a big problem. uh, it's nice that Elon Musk has a lot of money. If he wants to give us some money for our movement, great, right? So we would be pragmatic about this, a bit opportunistic about it. But on the other hand, we should prepare for a future where we will not rely on money because we are not for sale anymore. We won't allow people to buy us anymore, right? Money should not be able to tell us what to do. Money is useful as a means of exchanging goods and services, but by no ways should money be able to buy our politics and then the rich get to determine our future in their benefit. No, 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 no. That's awful. We don't want that anymore. Right, they don't own us. Exactly. We need to understand that we can develop all the skills and the competencies we need to succeed on our own terms and basically laugh at the rich. We can start laughing at them because they won't be able to deal with what's coming. When the global economy collapses, these rich people will find out that you know imagine guys like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk in a gladiator arena. How long would they last there? Like when it comes down to it, um, the billionaires will be like the emperor without clothes, right? People will just be pointing fingers at them. Like you're not really powerful. You don't have that power over us. No, I'm Dutch. I'm not Finnish. I'm starting to think that Elon Musk may be an actor, but he's not really the CEO of SpaceX and so on. But we'll see about that. He's not really important either. So when the global economy collapses, right, the third world population soon follows. Yeah, they would starve. That's a risky business to be in Africa, I think. All right. Well, if you have if there's some more questions from the audience, yeah, I would gladly answer or talk about some more things. I kind of ran out of things to say for this episode, but then I'll come back another time, of course. So, yeah, yeah, that's another issue. You can't talk about it on TikTok. I used to have a friend on TikTok, Daria, who would talk about the Zionists, and her videos were always censored, always taken down. Now they banned her account, so she's gone now. But yeah, the it's odd that in the U.S. the lawmakers appear to be loyal to Israel more than to us, more than to themselves, to their own people. Yeah, that's strange. Are they going to tax space? Yeah, thought so. Yeah, they're going to tax planets full of people. Yeah, that's how they think. Maybe. Do you want to go along with that? No. Africa is a net importer of food, so without the West supplying that, Africans will starve. Right, but there are 1.3 billion Africans today. Before the colonials came, there were only 30 million Africans. So you've got way too many people now. If you wanted to live off of your own food that you can produce, a billion of you will starve. Wales survived 600 years without government. Yeah, you could do that again. Yeah, good idea. I'm gonna look into that. Yeah, I mean the history of Africa is basically they have a lot of kids and then they starve. They have a lot of kids and then they starve. And then Western people came introducing medicine and education, and now their children no longer starve. They survive until, of course, the whole thing is like a Ponzi scheme, like a pyramid scheme, and it just collapses. Right? The Welsh are hard. Right, right. The whole American public space is like worldwide wrestling, right? And it's theatrical. Yeah, it's a show. It's all for show. It's over the top often. Yeah. Uh, so this is my first live stream since the Americans got off of TikTok. And, I haven't really noticed the difference. It's the same for me. I think Americans were maybe 30% of my viewers, but then I'll have a fewer viewers, but it's not a big deal, right? Um, yeah, is TikTok coming back tomorrow already for the USA? Yeah, probably. Yeah, we need William Wallace. Yeah, we need these kinds of heroes. Yeah, they say that Trump will give them 90 days more, and then they're going to make deals. And yeah, it's silly that these people who govern us are not mature people. Yeah, yeah, it's manipulation. Yeah, because Trump will be inaugurated tomorrow, and then they're going to bring back TikTok and so on. All right. I've been talking to you for almost an hour, so I run out of things to say, and that means I'll be back another time, probably Wednesday or so, Wednesday in the evening. I enjoyed this. This was a very productive episode. I'm going to upload this to my YouTube at The Great Johannes. It's my YouTube channel, and also my newsletter, jmk.info. You can subscribe there for free, or if you want to donate, then you can donate as well. Uh, and I'll post this episode there so you can replay it if you want to see the whole thing again. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Indeed.